Boys and boys, girls, is archaic, pirates, see what future, the princess, the nut terror, and the future of the world, OverExposedKaiju. And today, we're back on the reaction channel. And boys, the grind doesn't stop. We just got done filming, like, 6 hours straight. I took a little break, took a nap. Now we're back with some OverSimplified, the Pig Wars. Or the Pig War? I think it's the Pig War. I said the Pig Wars like there's multiple, like there was plural Pig Wars, but it's the Pig War. Who knows? Maybe there's been multiple wars over pigs, and this is, but basically, yeah. So from what I know about this, this is like during the Manifest Destiny days, right? It was like prior to the Revolutionary War. Sorry, not the Revolutionary War, the Civil War. And it was during like the Manifest Destiny days, the expansion westwards for America. And yeah, it's kind of all I know. I know it has something to do with the British. But yeah, and I think it has to do with like islands. I think I've heard of this war, but I never really got into like much research about it because it didn't really seem to be like a very well-known war, let's say. But yeah, I saw this pop up. I've been kind of on the grind with oversimplified, reactions. Because there's not too many left. I think we have 6 oversimplified reactions left. I think we have this. We had the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, and we have one more. What is it? I can't remember what else. But I know we have this, the French and Russian revolutions. And we have one more. I cannot think of what it is at the top of my head at the moment. Oh, and the War of the Bucket, I think. But yeah, after that, I think we're all caught up with oversimplified content. So we're in a home stretch, kinda. Guys, let's get to it. Enough rambling. Before we get into the content, if you're new, stick around. Join me to subscribe and join our Satire Mafia. And hit the like button. It goes a long ways. Help me chill grow. And lets me know you want to see more content like this in the future. And make sure you go check out OverSimplified. That guy's literally one of the most hilarious and best history channels on YouTube. And if you want to check out the video, my commentary, make sure you add, or make sure you go down to the description. I'll put the link to this video in the cards below. Go check it out. Leave it a like. Do a lot of cool stuff. Anyways, let's get into it.
Boys, we've only
Thomas Jefferson.
done it.
Yeah. Okay. James Madison, James Monroe, or yeah, Monroe, Madison, Jefferson. All right. So this is right over the. God, I cannot talk properly right now. Sorry, I just woke up from a nap, so I'm my brain's still a little trying to boot up a little bit here and there. So this is right after the Revolutionary War. After we got our independence. This little bit right here that you did for the intro. So we just got our independence from the British Empire. All right, cool.
Beat the Brits and secured independence. Now to expand westward and conquer the rest of the continent. Thomas? It looks like a bunch of different people already live out west. What? Oh no, that means we can't expand. I hate my life. Whoa. I didn't say they were white people.
Fair and sad, but true. I honestly am not. I am kind of disappointed with how Native Americans are treated. Like people who lived in, this land for thousands of years, and all of a sudden, Europeans and everything came and, like the thing a lot of people are like, oh, we're on stolen land. But the thing is, it wasn't like this wasn't like a one nation kumbaya peace and love with all Native Americans. Like the Native Americans, they would go to war with each other. They would murder each other. Like it was not like a peace, love, harmony paradise. Some people make it out to be. Like, oh, we came in, all of a sudden, all these friendly and peaceful natives are all of a sudden conquered. It's like, no, that's not what happened. It's not even close. There were friendly tribes. I'm not gonna say there weren't, there were friendly. God, sorry. There were plenty of like friendly tribes, but there were also plenty of hostile tribes who not just attacked, the Europeans who were coming onto their continent, but also felt like they would attack and murder and rape and steal from other tribes around them. Like it was, like I said, it wasn't like a peace and love, kumbaya existence with all the tribes on the continent. It was a very bloody and violent for thousands of years prior to the Europeans coming. For centuries and centuries and centuries prior to the Europeans discovering, quote unquote, discovering um America. And yeah, so yeah, it was by no means like a America, Europeans coming and like, well, I mean, it was like the Europeans did come and they conquered these lands which Native Americans lived on, but like it wasn't exactly like we came and took over another kumbaya, peace, love, and happiness. Uh, nobody ever got murdered. Nobody ever got conquered. Like no, nobody. Like they never murdered each. Yeah, yeah. That never happened. Like it was basically like a fight for survival with all the tribes. Um, and they'd constantly go to war with each other and try to take over each other's like territorial areas for food and resources. Like yeah, it was kind of like it's that might sound bad, that might sound awful, but that was kind of how it was. Like was it stolen land? Yeah, but like by that logic, like how far back do you want to go with this? With quote unquote stolen land? Because people have been conquering lands for pretty much basically since the beginning of human civilization. Like there've been empires and lands being conquered and all this by countries and nations and empires all over the world. So like how far back do you want to go and what is considered stolen quote unquote lands, Like it's very, very it's a slippery slope and a can of worms you probably don't want to open because all of a sudden, that'd be like a snowball effect that can never be stopped. The world as we know would probably collapse if we want to go by returning the lands to the original occupant. Because like how far back do you want to go with that? Because then that would affect Europe, that would affect Africa, that would affect Asia, that would affect like it would be like a never ending hit of like snakes. Like it would just like never end because all of a sudden like because like I said, like it has just been conquering for just basically the beginning of human civilization. Like it's just it'd be a mess. So calling it quote unquote stolen lands is kind of dumb. Like because they were also stealing because the natives were also stealing each other's lands and murdering each other and like subjugating other tribes. Like it was basically like the Europeans like right there, or sorry, what the Native Americans were doing. And I'm not trying to say this to be like racist or whatever because that's not my goal here. I'm just trying to explain. I'm just trying to explain because people use this all the time. But like, but what the Europeans are doing when they're going around, conquering lands for their empires, the Europeans, like the Native Americans are doing the same thing. Like the Native Americans, a lot of the Native American tribes, like they had their own empires in a sense, like the Incas, the Aztecs, the Mayas, for example. Like obviously those were more like Southern America, but that's just an example. Like they had their own massive empires and were conquering like their own. We're basically doing the same thing that the Europeans were doing, which is taking our lands and murdering and pillaging and just doing the same thing that the other empires around the world were doing at the same time, right? So yeah, just my point of view. Anyways, moving on. The big wars.
At the end of the Revolutionary War, when the United States secured its independence from Great Britain, the two sides met in Paris to settle the terms. Among various things, they discussed American territorial gains, and the British granted them a generous amount of land out west.
That's not bad.
However, Benjamin
Like you start out with 13 colonies here, right? And then the British like, you know what? We'll give you a little bit more territory over here too. Like that's not a bad chunk of expansion, honestly.
Franklin appeared to have an additional fascination. Oh, Canada. So voluptuous. You think we can maybe acquire some of that? Quit ogling our territory. But look at those curves. I'd worry less about Canada's curves and more about your own curves, Benjamin.
Damn.
Many in America suggested that one day the Canadian Benjamin.
Okay. Bruh, there's like a troll face over here. The British flag, colonial America's flag. Or I guess newly independent American. Sorry, not the colonial. I guess yeah, not the colonial America. Sorry, the freshly independent American flag. Okay.
Many in America suggested that one day the Canadian colonies should become a part of the United States. In response, Britain suggested that many in America should shut the hell up. Well, if Britain wasn't going to give up Canada, then the two sides had to agree on where to put their border. Easy enough for the most part. Follow some existing borders, add in a few rivers and lakes, maybe even a parallel for good measure.
Makes sense.
But then there was a question. What would happen here? Straight line, straight line. And so it was. The border would go from the northwesternmost point of this perfectly oval-shaped lake and continue in a straight line westward until it met the Mississippi River. Perfect. Or was it? Well,
But the Mississippi's not. Alright.
as it turned out, the lake didn't actually look like this, but like this.
Yep.
And the Mississippi wasn't here,
not there.
but here.
Yeah.
So in the end, none of that made even the slightest bit of sense. Don't blame the founding fathers. They were just using the best map available. Blame
True.
the guy who made it. But to the minds of the day, the issue had been solved, and it was finally time to start getting along. Oh,
Nope.
back to war they go. The Glorious War of 1812 saw the Americans try to invade Canada, and the British burn down the White House. But when all was said and done,
Man, this is an ugly border. Oh my god. I mean, Canada's borders weren't exactly pretty either at the time. But I guess like I guess the British weren't done expanding their territory in Canada either. These are some ugly borders. God damn. But yeah, this is like the early days of American independence. Like they weren't done expanding westward or anything like that. And this was back when the British were still conquering territory in Canada too.
it was pretty much a draw. And once again, America and Britain had to enter into peace negotiations. By now, both sides realized
The War of 1812 was during the Napoleonic Wars too. So like the British were kind of balancing dealing with Napoleon, right? They're too busy, dealing with Napoleon and Napoleon, in the French Empire, the first French Empire. Even though the French had an empire, I guess a colonial empire prior to Napoleonic France's empire. Like I never understood that. Why did they consider the colonial empire separate from like the other? Like they weren't separate technically, but like when you look at it, like they don't consider the colonial empire as like the same thing as like the first French Empire, or at least most historians don't. They consider it like its own separate thing. In terms of like establishments, that's what I meant. Sorry, that might be a bit confusing. What I meant by establishment date, because like the French Empire can trace its history back to like the 1600s. I think maybe a bit earlier than that. I think maybe like the late 1500s. I think I could be wrong. Hold on. I know that's what I picked. I know. French. 1534. Okay, yeah. So it was around for a long time. 1534. And like, yeah, it was like it's technically part of like the first, and the second French empires, but they they consider the first and second French empires to be its own separate entity instead of like an extension or a continuation of the colonial empire, which is confusing. You know what I mean? Like, See, not to get confused with the first French Empire. Go here, and then they say 1804 to 1814. You know, debatable, right? It's kind of debatable, and like where you could probably even put it back in, you know, right? Or 1808 to 815 or 1815, like, type of thing. But like, they don't yeah. Like, he says, although French already had established a colonial empire overseas, start 17th century, French state had remained a kingdom under the Bonapartes, which makes sense. But like, I never understood that. Like you would think like they would just like be like, oh yeah, we're a continuation of our colonial possessions, right? I don't know. It's just confusing. Sorry.
As the original
I'm gonna
border
get
they came up
sidetracked.
with was a piece of hot garbage. And since America had also recently obtained a huge amount of land from Napoleon, they decided
Yep. Again, against during the Napoleonic Wars, which we'll get to in another episode. I honestly loved the Napoleonic Wars. Like the Napoleonic Wars is it's like one of my favorite time periods, and the French Revolution, which you can guys combine them two into like one era. But like the French Revolution slash like the Napoleonic Wars are like some of my all time like are one of my favorite historical periods to look at. It's such an interesting time period. Right, onwards, upwards.
they would need to re-examine the border issue.
Straight line.
Straight line,
Yeah,
straight line. And
literally.
so it was. To fix the problems of the previous border agreement, they decided to go from the northwesternmost point of this lake,
Just a
as had
straight
been
ass
previously
line.
agreed, down to the 49th parallel, and from there the line would go straight as an arrow up until the Rocky Mountains. But beyond the Rockies, the two sides couldn't quite agree on where it would go next, because both sides claimed the territory beyond the Rockies was theirs. See, throughout its early history,
Wouldn't it just make sense just to continue going straight? Like obviously, with hindsight, we know that continues going straight, right? With hindsight, we know. Oh, also, I think these islands right here. You're kind of hard to see right here. I think I could be wrong, but I think these islands right here are what the pig of the pig war, or what they're gonna be fighting over, or like these tiny little islands right here. I might be wrong, but I think that's what they are. But yeah, you can just go like, let's keep going straight this and stop like I don't know, right here, and then anything underneath would be American sphere of influence. Anything above this line would be like that would be such an easy, you know, that'd be such an easy agreement. Like, hey, like instead of like potentially going to war again over over this territory here, we just keep going straight, and then anything below that border is my sphere of influence, and everything above that is your sphere of influence, and you could have easily avoided um any any potential uh what am I trying to say here? A potential conflict in the future, right? And then like any islands, like I said, like any islands, you could like negotiate and talk about peacefully, and then figure out from there. But like yeah, this would you could just go to like you could just go on like straight line, top is mine, bottom's yours. Like you got that's your sphere of influence, this is our sphere of influence. Stay out of each other's spheres of influences, type of thing. Like that'd probably be like easier, but what do I know? I didn't make maps in the early 1800s.
history, America as a nation had its eyes heavily fixated on all that juicy land out west, ripe for invasion. I mean, settlementation.
Yeah.
America wanted to expand. Not only was it their right, some believed it was a destiny given to them by God himself to multiply and spread across the continent, like rats or disease. Okay, guys, just before we take over everything, God definitely said this is what we're meant to do, right?
Yeah, that's what he said, right? Isn't that what he said?
And who was it who spoke to God?
I honestly don't understand why people have to justify expansion. Like this was the 1800s. Literally every other great power was expanding and like building empires at the time. Like literally, like people were like, oh well, it's a mortal bad or whatever. But it's like, bro, like literally every other great power in the world was doing it. Like all over the world. I'm not just talking about Europe. I'm talking about Africa. I'm talking about Asia. Like literally all of like the great powers at the time had like empires and colonial empires and expansionist idea plans and like I don't know. Like it just seems like weird to me. Like America be like, oh, we don't want an empire or we're not an empire or whatever. It's like what? America is very much an empire. And I know America doesn't like say it's an empire, but it is. Let's be honest here. It is. Most historians agree that America is an empire. Like there are plenty of historians out there who, and commentator and like history commentators that type of stuff who agree. Historians who agree that America does have at least the bedrock for what an empire, what would we consider an empire, right? Like we never really had an emperor, unless you want to talk about Emperor Norton, but that's a different story for another time, right? That was like an honorary title and kind of like a gimmick from her, right? But yeah, like I don't know. I never understood the whole thing where people were like, oh, we have to justify expansion, right? It's like for America, right? Like people are like, oh, it's a bad thing, but it's like, bro, everybody else is doing it. And you know, when it comes to that, people are like, oh, well, if everybody else jumping off a bridge, would you too? And I'd be like, hell no, I've been the first one to jump. God, I would have been the first one to jump, and everybody else would have been following after my lead, you know. If everybody else jumping off a bridge, would you too? Me, hell no, I would be the first one to jump.
It was Billy, right? I thought it was Sharon's cat. I hear voices all the time.
Well, it was one of us. There's no way we made this
I hear voices all the time. Me too, buddy. Me too.
whole thing up to justify a ruthless collective imperialist tendencies. All right, well, in that case, let's get out there and make the world a better place, just as God intended.
Yeah. America!
This belief in divinely destined expansion would later be given its very own name, Manifest Destiny. But America wasn't the only one interested in controlling the Western territories. At the time, Canada was made up of a number of colonies, collectively referred to as British North America. This one over here was owned by the Hudson's Bay Company, a British charter company dedicated to turning as many beavers as possible into as many felt hats as possible, as quickly as possible. And the indigenous people...
It's honestly crazy that beavers didn't go extinct during this time. Like the amount, they slaughtered beavers for decades. Like the fact that beavers didn't go extinct. What? Okay, what? Is the wow? I cannot spell apparently. Between 6 million and 15 million. The beaver population in Canada is currently estimated to be 6 to 15 million. Specifically, one source estimated the population was 6 to 12 million. Well, another suggested that could be 10 to 15 million, indicating a healthy population, especially considering historical declines due to fur trading. Huh. That's honestly crazy. Oh, so they have like no natural predators, so they kind of they kind of explode in population. Okay, but yeah, like it's kind of crazy that beavers didn't go extinct, because they were hunted for the fur trade, like ruthlessly for decades. Kind of crazy.
People became a key supplier. As a result, the British were also eager to control the land out west. People became a
These white people sure love beavers.
key supplier. As a result, the British were also eager to control the land out west and secure that region's valuable resources. And in particular, the Great Columbia River was deemed vital to the beaver business. So when it came to the question of what would happen to the border beyond the Rockies, the conversation went a little like this. The line should keep going straight.
That's what I
because
said.
We're manifestly destined to gain the entire North American continent. No, we need this river so we can keep scalping beavers. Look, why don't we just draw the border along the river? That way we both have access to it. Well, that would be a completely fair compromise that protects the interests of both parties. And there's no way I'm ever going to agree to it! Having
fair.
come to a roadblock, both
Like, just keep going straight. Like, so that is like you literally Canada literally has like thousands of lakes, right? Or like 1,000 lakes, something like that. Like literally, Canada's full of lakes. Letting one river, or at least half of one river, go should be fine, right? Like, just keep going straight. You can avoid a conflict, and wars are expensive. You know, it's going straight. American sphere of influence, British sphere of influence. Like, easy enough.
both sides simply agreed that for now, they would jointly occupy the Northwestern Territory. They were both free to settle and trade there. But rest assured, the agreement was only temporary. Eventually somebody would get their way. Listen, Yank, we can jointly occupy this land, but I ain't sharing anything else. I don't want to see you using my toothbrush.
Oh.
I don't want to catch you wearing my underwear.
What the fuck?
And I don't want to...
Why would he have access to your toothbrush and underwear? Like, if he's having access to personal things like your underwear and your toothbrush, then you have a whole nother problem, my guy. Also, I like how he has umbrellas on top of his house as a decoration, and the American has some moose antlers up here, or deer antlers. Maybe deer antlers. I think maybe deer, moose, some kind of animal antlers.
I catch you using my computer.
Oh, okay, then this is going into an ad.
Of Oregon. And one man living here who felt the territory should be British was James Douglas, the Hudson's Bay Company's no-nonsense chief factor at Fort Vancouver. Ah, what a beautiful, unspoiled corner of the British Empire. I've got my spotted dick, my Spice Girls fan club membership, and an unrelenting negative outlook on life that affects everyone around me.
Same.
What are you looking at, Steven? Yes. Truly British. What the?
Yes!
Like Douglas was that many Americans had already begun streaming up the Oregon Trail. Gunslinging, howdy neighboring, diarrhea having. By the thousands, they were pouring into the Oregon Territory in search of land to settle and farm. This, however, crowded out the fur trade,
our
and
home!
eventually, a very bitter Douglas and the other Hudson's Bay traders at Fort Vancouver were ordered to relocate north to a new base of operations. But the Americans keep coming and they don't stop coming. Hopped in their wagons and they hit the ground running. Didn't make sense to keep sharing Oregon when they outnumbered the Brits more than 6-1.
Damn.
And suddenly...
God. Bruh. All-Stars reference? I see you.
The whole joint occupation deal was being called into question. Newly elected President Polk maintained that America had an obvious claim to the...
President Polk! Polk's a president that doesn't really get talked about a whole lot. Or I feel like he's undervalued as a president, but I like President Polk. He's pretty cool.
Entire region, even implying a possible war with Britain. Fiery language from U.S. senators declared that American rifles would annihilate the Hudson's Bay Company in Oregon, and America even gave Britain notice that it was pulling out of the joint occupation agreement. The British were alarmed as the two sides stood on the brink of war. But in the end, neither truly wanted to fight. The British favored maintaining good economic relations, while the Americans had already gotten themselves into a war with Mexico. So after a bit of back and forth, the British finally said, "Fine, you wanted a straight line? There's your straight line."
Damn, nice.
And so, the agreement was made. The border would continue directly to the Strait of Georgia. But because the British insisted they keep Vancouver Island, it would then move south through the center of the channel and on to the Pacific Ocean. Finally, the issue of the northwest border had been solved. Hold the phone. Discrepancy detected. Enhance frame, 200%. Enhance.
Yeah, these are the islands I was talking about earlier. It was a little hard to see on the other map, but yeah, there were islands right here, and these are islands they're gonna be arguing over for the next couple of years.
Enhance.
Oh.
Too far. Perfect. Now, show me the exact wording of the treaty. The line of boundary goes to the middle of the channel, and thence southerly through the middle of said channel? But there's loads of channels.
Yeah, there's a lot of channels there.
So, you tell me, dear viewer, which channel is the treaty referring to?
I would assume the British were talking about this one right here. But I would assume the Americans would probably be like thinking, oh, you know, this is part of this island chain right here, so it should go through here, you know, type of thing. Like, I don't know.
And therefore, who owns these islands? Is the wording of the treaty maybe a little too vague?
Yep.
Well, that's exactly the problem encountered by the people living in the area. The British insisted that the channel intended by the treaty was the Rosario Strait, and therefore, the islands were British. The Americans, on the other hand, argued that the intended channel was the Harrow Strait, and therefore, the islands were American. At times, the debate became rather heated. Even the individuals who negotiated and signed the treaty at times didn't seem entirely sure which channel the treaty meant, and representatives from the Hudson's Bay Company begged them to make it clearer.
Well, I
But
just said it,
thousands
Marshall.
of miles away, the people in power simply had more to worry about than some tiny islands in the middle of nowhere.
Order! Order the court! Nice.
All right, listen up. We got a lot to get through.
All right.
The 7th Earl of Chissingham says he encountered a foul beast.
What? Jizingham and Fartingdom? Jeez, okay. What? I got a lot of questions here. To any British viewers out there, why is it? Why do you guys have, you know, Jizingham and Fartingdom? Like, you guys have some explaining to do here, British.
In the fields of Upper Fartingdom late last night and put this sketch together? That's a poor person, Darren. Ugh. Next, Lord Piddlingham says he has a new mole on his backside. How is that
Why is
parliamentary
that
business?
Yeah, why does that have to do anything with the Parliament?
Oh, some islands in the Pacific Northwest are in dispute and could lead to a war with America? Boring. Fine. Let's take a look at that mole, George.
Mole.
And so, for now, the islands were simply held in dispute. Were they British or were they?
So basically, Parliament's just about as useless as the American Congress. Got it. I'm glad that, you know, nothing's changed over the years. You know, I'm glad we still have that you know, those roots of our British heritage. You know, both our, you know, Parliament and Congress are usually fucking useless. So, you know, good job, British. I'm glad, you know, we still have that in common, where, you know, where the Parliament and Congress, you know, they're both usually pretty fucking useless. So I'm glad we got, you know, that similar between us. So.
Are they American? I'm sure this conflict won't cause anyone to die. And one man who thought the islands were undeniably British was James Douglas, now the governor of Vancouver Island. He had already once had American settlers encroach on his territory and force him to move. And by golly, he wasn't going to let it happen again. As far as he was concerned, those islands were not only British, but prime agriculture.
Yeah, I guess if you want to put, you know, I guess you know, agricultural territories. But like, I feel like this is like, if you go to war over a couple of like 4 tiny islands here, it seems kind of, you know, pointless. Which I don't think they actually go to war. I think it's a dispute, right? Like there were some like armed conflicts, quote unquote conflicts, but I don't think they actually go to war, at least as far as I remember. Like I think they used war to kind of over exaggerate what it was. It was more of just a territorial dispute, which did get a little heated at times. But there was like massive war, because that'd be dumb if you go to massive war over 4 tiny islands that have little to no, you know, value. That was not at the time, you know.
Cultural land. And given the chance, those glubby Yanks wouldn't hesitate to start pitching flags with their glubby little hands. And so, he came up with a plan. If the British settled the islands first, then that would surely secure them for Britain. And so in 1853, Douglas sent an Irishman by the name of Charles Griffin, along with some Hawaiian shepherds, to go set up a sheep farm on San Juan Island. And set up a sheep farm they did. The place was rammed with sheep, 1,369 to be exact. But within those flocks of woolly cowards could also be found a number of beautiful, prized Berkshire pigs. Oh, Porky, you look stunning. You're the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. Would you perhaps like to go to the island ball together?
There's an island ball?
Oink once for no. Roll around in that cow crap if yes. Yes!
But why would there be cow crap? I thought it was just sheep and pigs here. So, like, where would cow crap come from? There's no cows. It was just sheep and pigs. At least that I know of. So why would there be cow crap here to roll in anyways?
I'm covered in poo and I'm the luckiest man alive! But life on the island for Charles Griffin wasn't
Belle of the ball, Porky. All right.
to be a perfect paradise of pig pageants.
That's definitely historically accurate.
Because unfortunately for him, the Americans also believed the island was theirs. One day, in 1854, an American customs collector was sailing around the islands on the outlook for bands of native tribesmen when he spotted something. Aha! I've got you now, you savages. Over yonder. Those are sheep, sir. Sheep, you say? What are they doing here? Let's go and negotiate with them. Negotiate with sheep? Are you crazy? I'm perfectly stable, you nutbag. Call me crazy again and I'll eat your eyes!
Makes sense.
Hello, good sir. We request to speak with your leader. Out of my way. Allow me to parley with this foul beast.
Holy shit, hold on.
We request to speak with your leader. Out of my way. Allow me to parley with this foul beast.
Take me to your leader. Get off my island, Yankee scum. Watch your mouth, lamb chop. You're the nut job talking to a sheep. I'll eat your eyes.
Hey, stop threatening my sheep. Your sheep? You mean to tell me that you, a British subject, have illegally imported these sheep into American territory? I'll have you know that you, an American, are currently trespassing on British territory.
Oh.
The Americans felt that they were entitled to collect taxes on the British property, because the island was American, and they threatened seizure if dues weren't paid. The British, meanwhile, threatened to arrest the Americans, because the island was British, and the two sides were in a standoff. To give Charles Griffin the legal power to deal with the American trespassers, Douglas said, "Hey, put on this wig."
Damn.
Boom. You're a magistrate now.
Nice.
And in turn, Griffin went to one of his Hawaiian shepherds and said, "Hey, I'm making you a constable. Put on this badge." The British then went off to arrest the U.S. Customs Inspector. But, being an American, he emerged from his tent with 4 pistols and a giant knife, so the Brits had to back down. Eventually, raids by northern tribes chased the U.S. officer from the island, but the Americans weren't done yet. Officials from nearby Whatcom County in Washington Territory believed the island fell under their jurisdiction, and they decided it was time to make the British pay up once and for all. They sent one Sheriff Barnes to go confront Charles Griffin. "Hey, you owe us $80.33 for all this farm stuff you got here.
Okay.
Go suck an egg."
Oh.
Oh, I see. So that's how it is, huh? That's how it's gonna be, is it? That's the way in which things are, eh? That be how it will, is it?
Yep.
Will it be how that is, huh? That be the way in which things be the way they are, is that? Get off my property! So the sheriff and other Whatcom County officials felt they were now well within their rights to seize and auction off Griffin's sheep in order to recoup lost taxes. And who would they auction these prized breeding rams off to?
Themselves?
But themselves.
Yes.
Then, in a pretty chaotic scene, they worked to tie the rams to their boats. And when Charles Griffin came running to rescue his kidnapped sheep, being Americans, they pulled out guns on him, and he had to back down. In all, Charles Griffin lost 34 breeding rams, and he was furious. The British complained to the American government, who were shocked to hear what had been going on at their northwest border. And both governments told their officials in the area to back off. We're not trying to start a major war over some dumb sheep and a stupid island. But also, the islands are definitely ours. Under no circumstances let the other side have them. For
Cool.
now, both governments agreed to set up yet another boundary commission to decide which channel was the correct border. But it often devolved into petty bickering. The British did make one interesting suggestion, though. We could draw the border through this middle channel and split the islands between us. Well, that
That
would
makes
be a
sense.
completely fair compromise that protects the interests of both
And
parties.
there's no way I'll agree
And
to
there's
it.
no way I'm
Yeah.
ever going to agree to it. And in the
He has an
aftermath of the sheep wing-
AK-47. That's pretty impressive. Having an AK-47 in the 1840s.
James Douglas, still stationed at Fort Victoria, became even more
Or I think this is 1850s now. One of the two.
cautious of American encroachment into his territory. Mr. Douglas, sir. It appears an Indian has discovered gold in the Fraser Canyon, just north of here. Shut up! Keep your voice down, boy. We can't risk those glubby Americans hearing about this, or our territory here will be infested with them.
Oh.
Oh no!
Sorry, Douglas. America! America, loving to get your asses kicked, socialist.
The Fraser Canyon gold rush attracted a heap of Americans to the region. Some got lucky. Most
Nice.
did not. And of those that didn't, rather than returning all the way home, many simply decided to settle in the area. And in particular, the juicy green pastures of San Juan Island were rather appealing. Believing the island was American territory, around a dozen American settlers moved there in the late 1850s. One of them was a man named Lyman Cutler, a young man in his mid-20s, and
Imagine that with a name like Lyman.
lazy as pie. He didn't want to have to clear a space in the
How can
forest to
pie
build
be
his home,
lazy?
so he said, I'll just build my cabin right in the middle of this British sheep run. I'm sure that won't make anyone mad. When he planted potato seeds in his garden, rather than building a nice protective fence around them, he said, I'll just fence in 3 sides and hope all these British farm animals have a moral compass and respect my property rights.
Oh.
Griffin's pig was a Berkshire, well known for rooting,
Yep.
and Lyman's fairly pathetic fence made for a bad combination. Numerous times he had to chase the pig away from his property, and he once angrily marched up to Griffin's home, saying, Hey, British farm idiot, keep your stupid pig out of my potatoes. It is up to you to keep your potatoes out of my pig.
Is that a real quote?
Griffin was furious
Wait,
with his new
that he writes that allegedly? Holy shit.
American neighbors. They built their homes all over his sheep pastures. And besides, what right did they have to be here anyway? It was British territory. Lyman, on the other hand, swore the local government had assured him his land claims were legitimate. And so to him, the British were out of line.
Oh.
Look at that sick freak. In love with his pig. Isn't that just sick? Yeah, what a freak. Not like our love, Spuddy. Ours
Spuddy has some Sonic the Hedgehog ass shoes over here.
is all natural. Yep, just a man and his potato. Nothing wrong with that.
Oh, what?
But the tension between Lyman and
Failed the ball, Spuddy.
Griffin was just about to explode. What the? Spuddy?
No!
All right, you damn dirty pig. That's the final straw.
Oh.
Lyman shot the pig. After taking a second to calm down, he felt bad about murdering Griffin's prized boar. So he went to him and said, Hey man, look, I kinda just killed your pig. It was eating my potatoes again and I don't know, man, I kinda just killed your pig. Killed your pig.
Oh no, he's on a snap.
Killed your pig. You swine! No, the swine is the one I killed. I'm Lyman.
Bro, imagine having a name like Lyman. No, I'm Lyman, bruh. You murdered his pig girlfriend? Question mark?
Griffin demanded Lyman pay $100 for the loss of the pig.
That's a lot of money
an
at the time.
outrageous sum at the time. Obviously, Lyman refused, threatening to shoot any more animals that dared enter his property.
$100. And 18. Okay, so $100 in 1850. It's equivalent to purchasing power of $4,121.35. For 75 years, the dollar had okay. Yeah, $100 and about roughly 1850. Let's say was over $4,000. That's crazy.
Even threatening to shoot Griffin himself. When Griffin complained to James Douglas, British officials went and confronted the pig killer. Again, they insisted he pay up, and if he didn't, Lyman claimed they threatened to arrest him and take him back to Victoria. British officials arresting an American on American soil and trying him under British law.
That's controversial.
Now that's controversial.
Yep.
And it's a controversy that attracted the attention of an American general in charge of the Department of Oregon, one William S. Harney. This guy,
Oh
General
no, not Harney.
had a reputation. He's the kind of guy who invades.
Not Harney. Oh no. I remember this guy. I'm not a fan of his.
Mexico without orders, wasting valuable resources and creating an embarrassing situation for everyone involved. He's the kind of guy who has one of his own men arrested for writing the wrong header on a report. He's the kind of guy who finds a dog digging up his yard and then chases it for 1.5 miles just to give it a beating. He hated superiors, hated being told what to do, and had been court-martialed 4 times for disobeying orders. Contemporaries.
If he's been court-martialed 4 times, why do you guys keep reinstating him? Like, it's obvious he's old, and he's old and past his prime, and he's, not exactly, not exactly the most intelligent guy. So why do you guys keep unsuspending him? Like, it's like, like court-martial him and then make him retire. Like, why do you keep reinstating him from his suspensions? He's obviously he has a proven track record of not being reliable.
He's described him as an imbecile, all matter and no mind, an arrogant humbug, and a laughingstock. Like I said, General Harney had a rip.
Yeah, literally. Like, and they keep reinstating him. Why though? Like,
Reputation. He hated the British and was out for any opportunity to earn personal glory for himself. By some accounts, he even wanted to become president.
Jesus.
And so, in July 1859, when he happened to visit San Juan Island, and he learned of the plight of the Americans living there.
1859. So this is just before the Civil War.
The shooting of a pig and the British threat to arrest Lyman Cutler, General Harney went into scheme mode. Hey, yo, Captain Pickett.
Not Pick. Okay. Pickett, he's... Oh, God. Of course it's these 2 idiots. Pickett, doesn't that hurt your head? Like, you're putting a heater up to your ear, and Harney, that's literally a fucking banana. This conversation should never be happening right now. You guys are both crazy.
Yes, sir. Listen carefully. I need you to go pick up some flowers and bring them to my place later. I've got a plan. Here I am, sir. What's the plan? Pickett, you and I are going to start a war.
Oh, no.
What do you mean, sir? Okay, listen up. An American man shoots a worthless pig on San Juan Island, and the British threaten to arrest him. Outrageous. But we can use it. We get the settlers there to send us a petition saying they need American troops for protection. That's when you go with your
Sarah
men
Bacon.
and occupy the island. The British will find American troops
Get bacon, as in pigs? Sorry.
on an island they consider theirs so offensive, they won't hesitate to blow you to smithereens. Then, it's war. We bring in reinforcements, and we fight back. I'll write to Washington, D.C., letting them know what's happening. But here's the kicker. My letter will take 6 whole weeks to get there. before the government even gets a chance to respond, telling me I'm an idiot and ordering me to cease fire, the island will be ours. Hell, we could even invade Vancouver Island or British Columbia. It's foolproof. Wow, very impressive, sir. But I gotta ask, why? Well, I'll level with you, Pickett. Historians still contest exactly what it is I'm trying to do here. It's
Yeah.
possible I'm trying to expand America's territory. Maybe
Fair.
I'm trying to play the hero so I can become president.
Fair.
Some have even suggested that since I'm a slave-owning Southerner, I may be trying to create a diversion to help the South secede in the upcoming Civil War.
Okay.
But if there's one thing that almost
All these are plausible. Want to distract, the government from Southern succession. Wanting to get his place as a president, because if Hardy becomes president, you could easily, he could avoid the North's, goals to potentially ending slavery in the South, right? And by expanding America's territory, like, he'll have his name in record books forever, or history books forever. Did that, like. So yeah, he's just out for himself to do this, get some personal glory, maybe become president, maybe, like, yeah, all these are plausible.
everyone can agree on. It's that I'm an idiot.
True.
I see. But hold on. What you tell me to bring flowers for? Because, Pickett, they're pretty and I like them! There are also historians who believe that Harney and Pickett had no secret plan at all, and were not scheming masterminds, but simply hot-headed buffoons.
True.
Genuinely outraged at the audacity of the British, and trying to protect—
I mean, Pickett's less so. I kind of have a respect for Pickett. But I hate Harney. No, the guy's just an idiot.
American citizens. But the fact of the matter is, Pickett took the very controversial and extremely provocative act of landing American troops on disputed territory. He set up his camp in a very exposed position and erected a very provocative sign proclaiming that only American laws applied on the island. It was almost like he was asking to be fired upon.
True.
Or, again, maybe he was just an idiot. When a British official sent to the island to get rid of the unruly American settlers now saw that there were American troops, he demanded they leave. He was obviously told to go suck an egg. When Douglas found out, he was enraged. To him, the American landing constituted an invasion. Harney sent a report back to the War Department in DC, justifying his actions with exaggerated claims of British villainy. But he knew it would take 6 weeks to get there, and another 6 weeks for their reply to come back. For now, the situation was entirely in the hands of local—
That's crazy. Like when you think about that, right? Like it would take 6 months to get there, and it's like 6 months back. Like, bruh, that's like what? I was like, what, 3.5 months, roughly, around there, right? Like, that's absurd. Like, that's crazy. Well, okay, 4 months. We'll say 4 months. Like, that's crazy. Like, again, they didn't really have the communication that we have today. They didn't really have cell phones. They didn't have emails. They didn't have any of that. They just had old-fashioned letters and horseback.
military and government officials, and the ball was in the British court. Would the temperamental Governor Douglas and the powerful British Navy respond to the American provocation with force? Were Britain and America really about to go to war over the shooting of a pig? Well,
That'd be dumb.
if one man were to have his way, it's entirely possible they would. James Douglas had already had Americans force him out of Oregon. They had threatened his position in Victoria during the Gold Rush. Now they had invaded his island, and he had had it. It was time to turn to the Royal Navy. You, Captain Hornby, go to the island and prevent any more Americans from landing. And take this magistrate with you to arrest Captain Pickett. Use force if necessary. Just don't do anything to start a war. Wait, you want me to use force but not start a war? Oh, I'm sorry. Is that too much to ask?
Yeah,
Princess?
I bet. Yeah, it makes it sound like you're being very vague. So if something does happen, the blame doesn't go on to you, even though you give the commands. The kid was so vague, you can just play off like, oh no, that wasn't what I was trying to say to him, type of thing. So yeah, that is a little hard, Douglas.
When Captain Hornby got to the island and saw that
It sounds like you're trying. It sounds like you're trying to save your ass by being as vague as possible.
the American force there was even larger than expected, his concern grew. He sent word back to Douglas, who in response ordered even more ships to the island. And at this point, the naval officers were like, hey man, let's talk.
Yeah.
They were concerned Douglas's escalation was leading them to war.
True.
And they convinced him it probably wasn't a terribly good idea to just go up to an American military captain with his armed men and say, hey bucko, you're under arrest. Please don't shoot me. Douglas gave in. To prevent any hostilities, he canceled all orders and told the Navy, for now, to simply keep an eye on the Americans. He did send one more ship for good measure. Captain Pickett, now seeing the British ships with their guns aimed directly at his exposed camp, said, see Jeff, look at that. We're about to get blown to bits, all according to plan. Hang on. Oh crap, Jeff, we're about to get blown to bits! Run!
Yeah, no
Pickett
shit.
hastily moved his camp from its very exposed position to another position, which, as it happened, was also very exposed.
Good job,
It
Pickett.
probably won't surprise you to learn Pickett came dead last in his graduating class. Nearby American and British officials began showing up to ask Pickett what the heck he was even doing. Then, a bunch of tourists showed up, because a major war breaking out in their doorstep was the single most exciting thing to ever happen in
That's actually crazy. Like, I would assume, like, yeah, during this time, there wasn't a whole lot of fun things to do. I would assume life's probably pretty dull and boring, right? But, like, it's crazy, because, like, even during the early days of the Civil War, like, you'd have, like, rich folk. It's like, you know, take like, trips up to, like, the battlefields and have, like, picnics and just watch people, watch, like, the Civil War battles. They're, like, the earliest days of the Civil War. It's crazy. Like imagine that happening today, right? Imagine like there's like I don't know, some like war happening, right? And all of a sudden like you and your family like set up like a little like a picnic blanket, make some put some sandwiches and some chips. You sit there and eating, watching as people are getting murdered, or like murdering each other. Like imagine that happening today. That'd be crazy. That and dangerous.
many of their miserable frontier lives. One Charles Griffin was particularly unhappy. First his pig had been shot. Now his sheep pastures were being trampled by soldiers and tourists alike. He complained to Governor Douglas, who was still pretty upset about the whole thing. Douglas felt British honor itself was at stake. So he decided that if American forces were allowed to be on the island, well then by golly, the British should be there too. It would be a joint military occupation.
Makes sense.
Upon hearing Douglas's new plan to land British troops on the island, Captain Hornby decided to go speak with Pickett in person. After informing him of the plan, Pickett replied that if they dared land, he would open fire. So there they were. The British had orders to land. The Americans had orders to prevent their landing. This was it. War. Over a small island in the middle of nowhere. Over a pig and some potatoes. Over
a couple islands where most people don't even know exist, right? Like, I'm sure like most people here probably didn't even know these islands existed until all of a sudden until like this video came out, right? Like most people probably like didn't even know these islands existed. Like it's crazy.
the US-Canada border looked like this, or
Like you can barely even see them on a map, and I think there's some maps where it barely even like, acknowledge these like little islands down here. Or I guess up here, not down here. That doesn't make any sense. Like yeah, like these little like islands. Like most people probably don't even know these exist.
like this. It was stupid. Hold on. This is stupid. To heck with it. I'm not landing those troops. I'm not gonna be the one who starts a war. The captain decided not to follow Douglas's order. And good thing he didn't, because pretty soon after that, the leading British admiral in the entire Pacific region showed up. Rear Admiral Baines outranked Governor Douglas. When he heard of everything that had been going on, he was stunned. But when he heard that Hornby had refused Douglas's plan to land troops, Baines could have kissed him.
Oh.
Whether he did or not, history doesn't tell. But I like to think they did. The Rear Admiral canceled all of Douglas's orders and instead pursued a policy of not interfering with the Americans until he could contact the British government. The Americans, not knowing the British no longer intended to land, had sent reinforcements and began fortifying. But even still, the British Navy did nothing. And finally, when word made it across the planet, informing the two governments of the ongoing crisis, everyone was shocked. Holy crap! Harney landed troops on disputed
James Buchanan, probably one of the worst presidents we've ever had in American history. Like, Buchanan was a horrible president.
territory? Man, I hope the British don't find out about this. Buchanan? Oh crap! The British! Why are we getting reports of American troops on San Juan Island? Whoa. I don't know, man. Nothing to do with me. But you're the president. What? Breckenridge? Am I the president? Yes, sir.
Wow.
Hey, we got a
Surprisingly.
problem. It looks like the southern states are considering seceding, and we're headed for the biggest crisis in the history of the nation. And it's your job to fix it, sir. Sir? Oh no. Go away. Not the curtain again, Mr. President. I'm not here. Buchanan. Back in the Pacific Northwest, Harney was beginning to realize the government may not be terribly impressed with his reckless actions. So he began firing off even more aggressive letters, justifying what he had done. Tell him the British were sending bands of Indians to attack our men, and that they're big meanies with coal for hearts, and that they made me cry like a little girl. Wait,
Oh.
no, that makes me sound weak. They made me cry like a big girl. Yeah, that's it. When the
Oh,
president
yeah, there you
received
go.
Harney's
Thanks,
new letters,
Harney.
his anxiety only grew stronger. Oh, crap. Hey, General Scott, please make this go away.
General Scott! General Scott! General Scott! I actually do respect General Scott a lot. I also like that they're, like, later in his career, he got so big, they had, like, lift him on top of his horse, which is kind of crazy. Yeah, I like General Scott. He's pretty cool.
Hey, leave it to me, sir. General Winfield Scott was the commanding general of the entire U.S. Army.
Yep.
Well known for his negotiation skills, he was a veteran of the Mexican-American War.
Yeah, General Scott was generally a pretty intelligent general. Like I know he hated Harney's guts. I remember, I know him and Harney had kind of like a rivalry kind of type of thing during, like, their careers, and Scott just did not like General Harney at all.
During which time, he had to deal with General Harney's idiocy and insubordination, and he watched as Harney got away with it all, thanks to his friends in high places. It's safe to say that Scott really did not like General Harney. By now, General Scott was racked with gout, and he was so big, he had to be hoisted onto his ship in a basket. Nevertheless, he
Crazy.
began the long journey to the Pacific Northwest. Okay, everyone, get over here. Will somebody please tell me what the heck is going on? I'll tell you, General. It all started on one fateful day last summer. Spuddy? All right, you damn dirty pig. That's the final straw. What? Hey,
Oh.
you can't get away from me! Look at that pig. Nowhere left to run, eh? I'm gonna enjoy this.
Lyman, if you spare my life, I grant you 3 wishes.
Damn. You could have gotten 3 wishes, Lyman. You could have wished for a cooler name. Oh, God. I can't believe you shot Freeman Pig.
So you see, General, the pig wasn't even on his property when he shot it. Liar! He's lying to you, General. I'll tell you what really happened. What a pleasant
Hey, Spuddy.
summer's afternoon here on my humble farm. It's just me and my beloved potatoes. I'm so happy. Say, Lyman,
Oh.
them some nice spuds you got there. Would be a shame if somebody ate them.
Oh.
Not again, you beast! Leave my potatoes alone! Yeah, I'm gonna eat them, Lyman. I'll eat them, and then I'm gonna eat you. Stay back! I'll shoot! Go ahead, punk. Make my day. Shoot me!
Mafia Pig?
Shoot me! He made me do it. He made me do it. So you're telling me you guys nearly started a war with the strongest naval power in the world over the shooting of a pig? Yeah.
It's a potatoes.
Yeah, now he's starting to get it. Not only the pig, sir. The British then threatened to arrest this poor, pure American soul. Thank you, General. Shut up. I don't care about you.
Damn.
Okay. I've made up my mind. You're an idiot. 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 You guys are fine. And you two are the most mind-numbingly brain-dead ding-dongs I've ever encountered
True.
in all my life. And I'll see you in my office. Okay, Harney, listen. I cut a deal with the Brits. Here's how it's gonna be. Both sides will maintain a small force on the island for a joint military occupation until our two governments can decide who owns the island. Now, the only way they'd agree to that is if Pickett is removed from command, so I'm replacing him with Captain Hunt here. Now, Harney, listen to me. Do not, under any circumstances, put Pickett back on that island, okay? I mean it, Harney. Do not order Pickett back onto the island. Understood? Yes, sir. Good. I'll see you, Glubos, later. Is he gone? I think so. Good. Hunt, you're fired. Pickett, you're going back on the island. All right, you psychopath. I've been waiting years for this. I hate you. I've always hated you. Harney had not only ordered Pickett back onto the island, but his department even notified the British that it did not recognize the joint occupation settlement, while everyone else had decided on peace. Harney appeared to still be threatening war. Needless to say, a furious Winfield Scott soon removed him from command and sent him elsewhere. In Harney's absence, the joint occupation went ahead, and the troops actually got along together quite well. The British attended 4th of July celebrations at the American camp, while the Americans visited the British for Queen Victoria's birthday.
That's pretty
Even
cool.
Pickett became good friends with his British counterpart. War, it seemed, had been avoided, thanks largely to the level-headed actions of the Royal Navy and General Winfield Scott. Of course, the islands were still in dispute, and the question of who exactly owned them still had to be answered. That answer would have to wait, because while San Juan was at peace, the nation was tearing itself apart. When
Civil
Civil
War.
War broke out in 1861, the issue of San Juan just wasn't
Abe
that
Lincoln!
important. Harney, despite being a Southerner, remained in the U.S. Army, but was eventually removed from command at St. Louis when his loyalty to the Union came under suspicion. More famously, Captain Pickett, a native Virginian, went on to become a Confederate general.
Oh.
Pickett's charge at the Battle of Gettysburg.
Yeah,
remains one of
Pickett's
the
charge. Okay, now this is actually a really interesting one.
most famous moments of the entire war and marked a major turning point. U.S. relations with Britain actually soured during the war. The British, missing their supply of southern cotton, initially looked like they may intervene on the side of the Confederacy. There was the Trent Affair, when Confederate diplomats were discovered and arrested on a British mail steamer. And then there were the British-built ships, sold to the Confederacy, that wreaked havoc on northern commerce. When the Civil War ended, furious American politicians called on the British to pay reparations. And by now, a long list of hot issues existed between them.
British built Confederate ships. Definition of the Deflationary War. Detroit War, sorry. Grand Banks fishing rights. Fenian raids in Canada. Renegotiation of lakes, rivers. Transit of goods.
And yes, on that list remained, 12 years later, still the issue of
Saying
who
hold on,
owned
Bowder.
these gosh darn islands. That issue, it was finally agreed, would be submitted to international arbitration. The Empire of Germany would decide, with the British and Americans
German Empire.
presenting arguments. The American argument was reportedly presented with a little more pizzazz,
Oh,
a little more zing. And in the end, when the Germans made their decision, they awarded the San Juan Islands to the United States. When an aging Douglas heard the news, he said that there was no possible way the British argument had been presented correctly. But that was that. The British conceded. And on the 25th of November, 1872, the last British troops left the island. As the Americans entered the British camp to raise their flag, they found that the British
I'm much more bet the only reason the Germans gave it to Americans is because they want to, you know, they want to miss the British, right? Like I'm sure the Germans just did it because they want to, you know, they're kind of, the Germans are kind of like, you know, we have a chance to do the funniest thing and troll the British. So that's probably what the Germans are thinking. Like, all right, you guys, the Americans can have it. Just be like an up yours to the British by Germans, kind of.
Had removed the flagpole. One last up yours to Uncle Sam. By this time, Charles Griffin had already left the island, and the Hudson's Bay Company eventually sold their sheep farm. And so, there you have it. A dangerous situation that almost brought two great powers to war, triggered by the shooting of a pig. But thanks to more level-headed minds and an eagerness for peace and cooperation, conflict was avoided, and the only casualty of this pig war was, well, just a pig. But how different could things have been? What if the British had attempted to arrest Pickett? What if they had landed troops? Could the two sides have actually gone to war? Could America have invaded Canada? Could it, perhaps, still invade Canada?
I mean, anything's possible.
Think about it. Why not? We have the manpower.
True.
We have the arms.
True.
It's our manifest destiny. Picture a future where American Mounties wear red, white, and blue and hail the stars and stripes. Where Wayne Gretzky would wave the American flag every 4th of July in the streets of Montreal. Maple
USA?
Syrup, the greatest American food. Banff, the greatest American national park. One united nation under the leadership of our glorious president,
Drake? Yeah.
No longer shall we tolerate our smug neighbors to the north with their affordable insulin and endless comments complaining that I don't talk about Canada enough in my videos. That's right, Canadians. Watch your backs.
Yeah.
With one
Woo!
eye tonight.
America!
Because Biden's coming,
Oh,
baby.
gross.
And this time, he's coming with a vengeance!
Oh, god dang. Well, that was the Pig War by OverSimplified. If you guys if you guys know the content, the commentary, send me a huge favor, hit the button. If you're new, stick around. Join your guests by subscribing and join us to Mafia. And make sure you go check out OverSimplified and make sure you check out the video that we reacted to. If you want to watch the video without my commentary, go check it out. Links in the box below. But yeah, anyways, I'll tell you later. Peace.
Gonna be on myself so I can truly build. Hey.